and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. We see all around us food prices going through the roof. We hear that some governments are imposing exports ban on wheat and other food products. And then there is an objection to that, and widely so. Both the countries which ban wheat export and which protest are justified in their own way. What's amazing is that there's emerging global food price. And as if the Russian war in Ukraine was not enough, the disruption in this year's harvest means that the problem will become exceedingly acute. And I'm amazed that our agronomists, our governments, are not concerned with the disruption of this year's harvest at all. The heat waves in India have destroyed a sizable amount of the wheat crop. So has happened in Pakistan, the major wheat producing countries after Ukraine. And as I said, this is going to become more and more acute every day. It was first the war in Ukraine that led to an explosion in the food prices. Before Russian invasion, Ukraine accounted for about 15% of the global exports of wheat, 13% of barley, more than 15% of sunflower oil, 5% of the rapeseed oil, 15% of the corn. But these deliveries have been disrupted on a scale which is unimaginable. And that is because Russia is blockading Ukraine's ports and bombing its grain storage facilities. After all, everything is fair in love and war. But in April, for example, when the Food and Agriculture Organization food prices index was seen, it was already 30% higher than last year. Now imagine, FAO index is not the retail index, it's a wholesale index. If the wholesale prices are 30% higher in 1 year, the retail prices, you can be sure, would be higher by minimum of 45 to 50%. How can people who live on marginal income, how can people who constitute the vulnerable section of society hope to make both ends meet? And as the situation is, by the coming in of fall after the summer and in winter, there might be a global food shortage ending into famines, social disorder, riots, and even possibly war. Because some countries would definitely like to go in for war for two reasons. A, to divert the attention from the food shortage. Secondly, to ensure that the food surplus countries share their surplus food with them. So the whole global order is in danger of being destroyed. And this is something which should engage the attention of the people. But this time when the World Economic Forum was meeting in Geneva, I found, and I was amazed, that this whole thing was seen as peripheral in nature. There were talks on other things. There were talks on war. A lot of the time was consumed in condemning Russia, eulogizing Ukraine. But have you forgotten that such a war took place in 1971 between India and Pakistan? And situation was not allowed to worsen because the big countries kept their hands off. US tried to send the nuclear armada, 7th Fleet, but then after Due persuasion and intelligence, they withdrew. Now, the whole Western world seems to have, along with the media controlled by the West, started condemning, criticizing Russia. Fine, anybody who engages in a war should be condemned. But this mass global help to Ukraine was never seen earlier. And just today morning, USA has said that it's going to send now more military aid worth billions of dollars. Now, coming back to the food crisis, let's not forget that the food shortage is not something which is specific to a country, it's not country specific, it's not location specific, and it is not confined to one section of society. Higher food prices and food shortages affect consumers all over the world. But as I said earlier, the poor countries, sub-Saharan countries, countries like Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, they are very, very vulnerable because they are already spending the lion's share of the income on food. They simply cannot compete with other countries when the prices rise. Increased poverty, increased hunger, and increased starvation, and protests will become inevitable. Do you remember what happened in 2007? There was total crisis, and that is basically, I feel, a purview of the shape of things to come. That's going to happen, and on a much larger scale. Owing to the state subsidies to encourage production of bioethanol fuel in USA and many countries, the food production is already reduced. Most of the acreage is going in for growing biofuel crops. So naturally the food crops are suffering. And you cannot divert the whole thing back again. The supply of corn available for use as food and animal feed has been gradually decreasing. So not only the human beings, but even the animals are going to suffer because you have reduced the pasture land, grazing land, and the forest land, and even the crop growing land. And that's why between 2006 and 2007, just in 1 year, the corn prices doubled. And that led to total crisis. In 1 year, tortillas became 35% more expensive. The same thing which is happening today in wheat, barley, and other food grains. In January 2007, hunger protests erupted in Mexico. People could no longer afford to buy food. And following the surge in corn prices, farmers started reallocating land they had previously been used to grow wheat, which in turn led to the wheat prices increase in 2008. So this way, causal effect came into being, and one thing led to another. The price of corn was increasing because of biofuels crops are being grown. Then, because then they diverted from to wheat, the things started to go out of the hand. And when consumers responded to these prices by switching to rice, what happened? The prices of rice started to rise. And they rose to the limit that most rice-eating countries had to change their dietary habits. So then, making things worse, what happened? Countries like Argentina, India, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Ukraine, Russia and Vietnam, their response was, hey, look here, food prices are going out of the hand. And if we keep on exporting, our people die of hunger. So we are banning exports. So these 9 countries responded by banning exports. And it was a justified measure. They had to protect their own people. Charity begins at home. But the global effect was terrible, terrible. And that led to worsening global scarcity, causing prices to rise further. By 2008, prices for wheat, corn and rice had tripled from 2006 levels. So in 2 years, the increase was 3 times. And whose fault? The countries which banned it are the countries which were not growing. So as the food prices continue to increase, more countries would experience social unrest. What happened in total crisis? The protests that started in Mexico spread to many developing and emerging economies, and at one time 37 countries were witnessing hunger protests, and many of them were violent. Now, I'm amazed that not a single TV station has discussed this issue, not a single newspaper has discussed this issue, not a single parliament in any country has discussed this major issue, that if in 2008 37 countries witnessed riots, hunger protests, violent ones, what shall happen now when the situation is going to be worse? Then these knock-off effects continue to materialize for several years. And then 2010-2011, Arab Spring could be seen as a belated consequence of this total crisis. After temporarily falling in 2009, food prices climbed even higher than before. And when a Tunisian greengrocer set himself on fire to protest corruption, he launched a movement that spread throughout Middle East. The mechanism that led to the crisis in 2006-2007 is still existent, still intact. There is no breach in that. To this day, the land use is stupid. The land that was once used to grow crops or food is used to produce biofuels. And faced with a choice between using harvest to feed people or to fuel cars, policymakers and the farmers often decided in favor of cars because that was more profitable. And today, 4% of the world's agricultural land is used for growing biofuels, and 40% US corn production is dedicated to making ethanol. Now imagine 40% in one country going only to ethanol, and remaining 60, again about 45% will go for feeding the pigs. Well, anyway, that's better because the pork can be eaten by the people. And now, look at it. Crude oil prices are rising. And this share is likely to grow even larger because crude oil and biofuels have been in direct one-sided substitution relationship ever since fossil fuels stopped being the cheaper alternative. Fossil fuels were supposed to be cheaper, but they are not. So in addition to immediate war-related increase from substantial Ukraine supply of food, other food effect prices are also accumulating. And what I see is in this fall and winter, the impact of missing harvest will become very apparent in the world markets. And the protest and the heightened crisis would lead to instability, riots, violence. In fact, The number of lives threatened by these impending humanitarian catastrophes would be so much that the present casualties in Ukraine war would be minuscule and negligible. The international community therefore must push that this war stops right now. But much more important is change the land use now. Any second's delay is harmful. Change it without delay. The time is not far off, and I don't want to be Cassandra whose warning is not heeded. There's too much at stake. And outright victory of Russia or defeat of Ukraine would be meaningless. Is a world over we see food shortages causing instability, lawlessness, and most important, degradation of human beings. The worst thing in hunger is that the people feel degraded, and that is something which has to be avoided. Are the leaders listening? Are the political leaders, along with the policy makers and strategists, agronomists, agriculture scientists, and the farmers, and the society leaders in large, attentive to what I'm saying? The Ides of March would be sometime in this fall and winter. Better gut up your loins and do the needful now, today. Tomorrow it will be too late. Thank you.